you, where you can set up boundaries for yourself in talking to them, in working with them, and in knowing how to communicate with them. That's the biggest downfall in all of this. When you get caught up in the back and forth and you don't know how to communicate with somebody that is high conflict. So one of the things that you can do to communicate with somebody that is high conflict and protect yourself is really watch the tone in which you are conversating with them or the way that you're writing. With a high conflict person, you never want to use the word you. That's a pet peeve of mine. When we use the term you, that insinuates blame. Instead, it's very important when you're dealing with a high conflict person that you use I statements. I feel this way. This is my opinion. And that at the end of all of this, you always ask them, what's your thoughts or opinions about that? Because they feel validated by you asking them that. So don't ever tell someone what you think in a high conflict situation. And first of all, you shouldn't be telling anybody directly really what you think. You should be listening to be understood, not listening to respond.
Never write back immediately. Have a 2-hour rule or, where you say, nope, anything that comes in, I'm not going to react, and I'll have a 2-hour where I'm going to take a breather and I'm really going to think about what I'm going to say back. Or what I found works really well is pick one time a week where that's when you read the text messages or you read the emails. That you pick a specific time that you have, geared up and you're ready to deal with it. And that is the only time that you look at the emails and then you respond. And by doing that, it allows you to not have this consistent nagging where you feel like you have to deal with something or you just have to consistently think about what they're saying about you, and it takes away that power. So look at that and really just say, you know what, I'm gonna be the better person. I can be that person. It's hard, I get it. There's gonna be days when you don't want to, but that's where your friends, your family, your cocktail, whatever you need is gonna help you kind of take that breather, step back, and recognize that by giving them what they want will just make it worse.
Clients often ask me if they're going to be happier after divorcing a high conflict person. And what I would suggest from the worst cases I've seen is it's going to be an unhappy transition and you need to be prepared for it. Pace yourself, get support. You may have a couple of years of high conflict interactions, especially if your case is ongoing in court. But then when people do find that they've moved away from that high conflict relationship, they do seem to be happier. They often find non-high conflict partners and kind of wish they'd found that earlier. But it's hard to promise, and a small percent of people have long-term high conflict divorces, which may go on 10 years, 12 years with conflict because their high conflict partner is so dedicated to staying in conflict. So some common behaviors of people with narcissistic personality disorder in relationships is a drive to put down the other person, that they see the world in terms of winners and losers, superior people, inferior people. And while they may have been very charming getting into the relationship, they now use their partner as the primary person that they put down to try to prove that they're superior because that person's such a loser, that person has everything wrong. And they'll do this in public. And sometimes it can be quite shocking and embarrassing. But that's what narcissists do.
People are so angry in the beginning of divorce usually. And when you're angry, you tend to point fingers at the other party constantly. All right, because you don't want to take responsibility for what has gone on, and the other person doesn't want to take responsibility for what has gone on. But there comes a time, as you see over time, where one party is acting in a way that can resemble narcissistic personality. And it's things like this that occur. 1, they're very belittling towards you. 2, everything has to be on their terms. 3, they have no empathy for what is going on with you. 4, they want what they want and they'll do anything to get it. They're manipulative. They use the children against you to get what you want. They'll never say sorry to you, even if you ask them. They will feel as though they are in a position where they're going to win at all costs and they don't care who it hurts to get there. Bottom line, we're looking at a person that is all about themselves and very selfish in their needs.
In the DSM-5 book, someone must have 5 of these personality symptoms out of 9. And so I'm just going to go through what those are so you can understand the symptoms of a NPD. We call it our narcissistic personality disorder. 1 has to have grandiose sense of self-importance. Typically, that's just someone who exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior. The next one is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. The next one is he or she believes they are special or unique and can only be understood or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. The next one requires excessive admiration. They're pretty into themselves and look for that admiration all the time. And the next one has a very strong sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. The next one is exploitive of others. They take advantage of others to achieve his or her own means to an end. The next one is lacks empathy, which means they are unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. And regularly shows arrogant behaviors or attitudes. So that kind of goes through the outline of what a clinician is looking for when we're looking for someone who has that disorder.
You cannot change someone that has narcissistic personality tendencies. You cannot change them. Stop beating your head against the wall and thinking that you can by showing your side to them, arguing with them, presenting your reasonable side. It won't happen. They have a fixed mindset pattern. They are right all the time and nobody else is right but them. But what you can do is change the way you react to them. And you don't want to react to them in the way that they are baiting you. Yep, they bait you to participate in their drama, to get what is often known as a narcissistic feed. They want to have you get angry at them. They want you to come back at them so that they can argue with you more. Don't do it, because you're only setting yourself up to get deeper and deeper into the web. They are never going to see your side. They are never going to show you empathy. It does not happen. Now, people are saying right now, probably, but Dr. Sue, I have to co-parent with them sometimes. I know you do. You can do it. And the way that you do it is, 1, by not engaging when they call you out names in these emails or these text messages or on the phone with you. You simply say, I'm not participating in this with you. There you take some kind of control over the situation. Or they email you and then every 2 days they are saying, did you get my email yet? Did you get my email yet? Did you get my email yet? You don't have to respond back the minute they want that. because that is breaking the need for instant gratification. Their ego is so big to begin with that they think that you are at their beck and call. No, you're not. You have your own life to live. Take control of that. Don't feed into their web. But also, don't try to change them because you're wasting energy there. You have to come to a place where you can actually say to yourself, I can participate in these conversations and I don't need to go into panic. I can gain some control over what is going on. But you're not going to change who they are.
So people with borderline personality disorder are preoccupied with fears of abandonment, and they have two basic strategies. One is clinging to their partner or other people in relationships, and the other is going into a rage if they feel that they've been abandoned. And so if someone's going through separation or divorce, they're going to see this combination of clinging behavior, no, don't leave me, and rage, you're a terrible, evil person, and I'm going to prove it to the world.
So we got fear of abandonment, we've got emotional intensity, we got really intense emotions, and the emotions swing from here to there and here to there. And the emotions take a long time to come back to baseline. They just stay up until somebody, it takes a real long time to put them down. And the other thing to know about people with BPD is that facts come before feelings, which means that the way they feel creates facts instead of facts creates feelings.
And when we look again at the DSM-5, it requires 5 symptoms of the symptoms listed. So they only need to acquire 5 of them. One is chronic feelings of emptiness. Another one is emotional instability in reaction to day-to-day events, meaning intense episodic sadness, irritability, or anxiety, usually lasting a few hours, and only rarely more than a few days. Another one is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. The next one is identity disturbance with markedly or persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. The next one is impulsive behavior in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging, such as spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. The next one is inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. For example, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, recurrent physical fights. The next one would be pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by extremes between idealization and devaluation, also known as splitting. The next one is recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-harming behaviors. Many times in people with borderline personality disorder, they will have this characteristic of suicidal behavior, but not always. The next one is stress-related, paranoid ideation, or severe dissociative symptoms. So that kind of goes through the list of borderline personality disorder of things that we as clinicians look at when we're looking at diagnosing that.
People with antisocial personality disorder, in relationships, their theme is they want to dominate and they want things and they're willing to hurt you to get those things. And they don't care, they don't have any remorse. They can be very aggressive. They may be physically assaultive. They may steal from you. They may lie. That's one of the themes of antisocial personality disorders. They're very deceptive. They may be doing something totally different from what you think. They may have a secret life, a hidden life from you. But the biggest theme is they're very aggressive about trying to dominate and push you around, and dominate and push the kids around.
You need to be prepared when divorcing a high conflict individual. A high conflict person doesn't play fair in the marriage, and this is only going to get worse as you begin the divorce process. You need to document everything. Record where legal, write down in your journal things that happen right after they happen, and save and print emails and text messages. Never put in writing or say anything that you wouldn't be comfortable with a judge or custody evaluator reading. It can be incredibly difficult to keep your composure when faced with the hatred of your ex-spouse. And they'll likely keep prodding you until you make a mistake or mess up somehow, and then that will be used against you. Sometimes it can be useful to have somebody with you during interactions. This person can later act as a witness, but you do need to be careful. If you're going to bring somebody, make sure that it's somebody who can keep their cool in a stressful situation. The last thing you need is for a third party to be getting involved or making a bad situation even worse. Never, ever get physical with your ex-spouse. And be careful of false allegations. Even things that seem simple or like things that normal parents should be able to do. For example, even something as simple as your child being scared at night because of a nightmare and coming in and climbing into bed next to you and sleeping next to you that night can be misrepresented or misconstrued to DCFS or the courts. You might think to yourself that you know how low your high conflict ex-spouse will go, but you will likely find yourself saying throughout the process, wow, even I never thought that they would go that low.
I will tell you a little piece of research that I find really interesting, and that is a therapist came up with a piece of research that showed with over a 90% certainty that predicted a divorce when these 4 elements were present. And I have seen them in almost every high conflict relationship. And number 1 is contempt. Contempt is when you think that there's something flawed about this whole being as a human. You as a species are just inferior. Remember, a narcissist is superior, but that's one sign, is contempt. The next sense is defensiveness. If the person can never take accountability for anything and thinks you're wrong for everything, and that's pretty much just about every fair conflict relationship, that is the criteria of defensiveness. The next one is criticism. Again, not, can you get the hairbrush out of the sink, but there was somebody who criticized me by calling me by my last name. You're such a Kreger. And that meant you were from a screwed up family and the family wasn't very good, and there's something inherently wrong with anybody with your last name. That is contempt and criticism. And the next one is the silent treatment or stonewalling. It is actually a form of abuse, domestic abuse actually. It's very interesting when you look at the criteria of what happens in a household with somebody with BPD or NPD or a high conflict person, as Bill called them, and you look at it and then you look at a list and then you Google list of things that abusers do, you will find that you have the same list. And I have written books where I have just gone to various "Are you being battered?" list and just compared them. And I said, this is the list that the San Diego County has of "Are you being battered?" And here is my list in the back of my book on "Are you living with somebody with BPD or NPD?" And what we're learning is that emotional and verbal abuse are actually affect you worse than physical abuse because they tend to be constant and ongoing, like a rain that just pours and pours and pours versus a river that maybe once you crossed and almost drowned it. So if those 4 things are together, if you're getting stonewalled at the silent treatment, if you're getting contempt, if you're getting defensiveness and criticism, you could probably do better by yourself, really, and your kids certainly could.
When you look at safety in a couple that have had huge issues and you're looking at trying to educate one or the other partner, that you probably need to look at the road of divorce. The first one that is pretty prevalent is domestic violence. And sometimes that's been going on for years. Sometimes the spouse doesn't understand because many times they're left to think that the domestic violence happened, it was their fault. So there's a lot of shame and guilt that goes into that to be able to educate, but for their safety, and many times the partner protects the spouse and has never called police, or she's been and had to get help many times for bloody face, for broken arm. But domestic violence is one that when you look at the longevity, if it's been going on, I talk a lot about needing to get out of that relationship.
One of the characteristics of borderline personality, narcissistic personality, especially the two of those, is they often show a lot of emotions. They're anxious, they're upset, they're angry, and emotions can be contagious. One of the places they can be contagious is the kids. The kids absorb these emotions, develop opinions that are identical to their parent because these emotions are contagious. And we see that in some cases of alienation. But they also can be contagious with professionals. So if someone's showing a lot of emotions, a professional might go, "Oh, wow, you've been treated terrible, and you need to be helped, I'll save you." And so what happens is professionals become what I call negative advocates. And emotions hook them in, but they're not really informed. Family members become negative advocates. They go to court to testify for their high conflict family member and discover their high conflict family member is doing a lot of things they didn't even know about. So emotions can drive a lot of high conflict cases because of this emotional contagion.
The biggest mistake that people can make in their divorce that can hurt their children is to lump the husband or the wife together with the mother and the father. And what that means is that you can be a really bad husband, you can be a really awful wife, but you can be a decent mom or a decent dad. And a lot of times when we go through a divorce, we just let our anger cloud that, and we just think, I do not like this person anymore, and therefore I'm just gonna let it feed into my thoughts about them being a dad or a mom. And what that does is it allows us to then use the kids as weapons. And we just need to stop that. At the end of the day, from all of the horrible things that your spouse has done to whatever the reasons the divorce are, if you can just breathe and you can look down and you think, what is the underlying goal that I have for my kids? And most likely you can say, I want my kids to be happy and thrive. I guarantee you, your spouse will say the same thing. Everybody will agree to that. And so when you kind of get to that bottom gut feeling of, oh, bottom line, we both want our kids to be happy and thrive, maybe we can then just say, you know what, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna realize everything he did or she did to me doesn't matter, because that's what the best part about divorce is. I don't have to deal with that anymore, but I can be okay with him being a dad or she being a mom, and I'm gonna support that. Your kids deserve both parties to love them and them for your kids to be able to love them. So give that to them. Don't make the mistake of letting the anger and the hurt and the sadness and the loneliness get in the way of knowing at the end of the day, both of you want your kids to be okay. Both of you want your kids to succeed.
So it's important not to label somebody with a personality disorder. You want to just have your private working theory, because you may be wrong. But even if you're right, what it's going to do is escalate them, because they see things in all or nothing terms. And so if you say they have a personality disorder, it's essentially you saying they're a terrible person and that you're a wonderful person. And so you want to steer clear of that. They can be very defensive. And I've had cases where settlement negotiations were going well, but then the person who my client had told had a personality disorder would say, but I'm not going to settle because my husband and Mr. Eddy think I have a personality disorder. And so I'm not going to agree to anything, and that would keep coming up. Now, it's very important in terms of court, in terms of judges. They do not want to hear people labeling each other with a personality disorder. They don't want to hear lawyers labeling the other party with a personality disorder. But there may be a personality disorder. So what do? You need to present the patterns of behavior, the most concerning patterns of behavior of this person, of the other parent, for example. And so by presenting, say, the 3 worst patterns of behavior, they may fit the personality disorder characteristics, such as mood swings, uncontrollable rage, lying to professionals and to the court. So present these patterns, the judge will get it. You don't have to use diagnostic labels at all.
So here are my 3 tips on how to communicate with a high conflict person. First of all, know right off the bat that you're never going to convince this other person that you're right and they're wrong. 2, go in with a tone that is neutral. That tone also has to have in it words such as, I believe this, or this is my opinion about this, not you did this or you did that. And 3, really try to compromise with the high conflict person and come to some place in the middle that you can live with. I know it's not going to be what you want. I said what you can live with, because by coming to terms with something you can live with, you will create peace instead of anger between you, and that will dissipate a situation that can flare up.
The most important thing, I think, is keeping a journal of concerning interactions. So if something happens with the other party that's questionable, you had an argument, a disagreement, or concern about parenting schedule or something like that, that it's important that you document it the same day. Just keep that in a journal, because that's valuable. A month later, a year later, your notes from the same day can be very credible. Keep it in a secure place, of course. I tell people who are still living with someone, a high conflict partner, they're considering divorces, to do this, but keep it in a safe place, maybe on a thumb drive or something like that. Financial records are very important. You want to gather those, find out what your accounts are. And one thing is sometimes the other party has their own financial accounts and records. And if you're living in the same house and that's a high conflict person, I've had cases where they went to court to get a kick-out order alleging a reason, domestic violence or child abuse, as a way to get you out of the house, and now you don't have access to those records. So I recommend that you take pictures of those records or get copies of those records before you leave or before you think things are going to escalate to that point. So generally keeping records, keeping them in a safe place, and not destroying anything.
So there's some great tips that I can give you on what to do and how to hire an attorney. I think the first thing is look for an attorney that actually specializes in family law or consistently does divorces. And the reason why is because I always said that I wanted to be an expert in one thing and not mediocre in lots of things. And when you get an attorney that does lots of things, they're not going to be an expert in everything. The other thing you can do is make sure you check reviews online. They're really important. Do not be afraid of the attorneys, family law attorneys that have bad reviews. And the reason why is family law is a very, very contentious kind of law. There is always going to be somebody that doesn't like what they did, especially because nobody wins in divorce. So sometimes negative reviews are the most telling, because that means that they're doing their job and they're doing it right, because you're not going to be perfect. Also, talk to friends and family. Everybody has a lawyer that they've taught, a divorce attorney that they might recommend, but don't just stop there, because remember, every divorce case is different. Even if you have similar facts, you could have a completely different result. So it's really not good practice to say, oh, my friend got this amazing deal because her attorney did this, and walk in there thinking that attorney is going to be able to get the same for you. It doesn't necessarily work with that. So the last thing is finding a divorce attorney is really like finding a spouse. You're going through some of the most raw and personal things that you've ever gone through, and your divorce attorney will know more about you at the end of your divorce than, somebody that you've been dating for several months. So it's really important to trust your attorney. Get that, gut feeling that this person has my back and I trust this person and what they're going to be doing for me. By doing that, you're really going to create a bond, and you're going to know that even if you lose, or even if you don't get, exactly what you want, your attorney fought for you and did the best that they could for you to protect you, your family, and your future.
So in terms of social media, I've always recommended that people try not to use it and not post pictures of the party you were at last weekend. That stuff will get used against you in family court. Your commentary on other people or sharing about your high conflict divorce may be interpreted as very irritating to a judge that says, why are you publicly talking about your partner in this manner? You really shouldn't be doing that. So I encourage people to get off the social media while they're going through their divorce, especially if it's a high conflict divorce. You can email your friends or talk to them on the phone.
As a divorce attorney, I deal with ex-spouses with NPD quite frequently, and it's hard. I see the stress and fear it causes in my clients. However, the best part about being a divorce attorney is seeing my clients' progress compared to their emotional and mental well-being at the start. People come to me in the worst time of their life. They are sad, depressed, scared, and unable to see the future. But as we go through the process, they are able to help themselves get to a better place. And I see their countenance change. I love when I see them after the divorce is final. They are different people, and sometimes I even get the new wedding invitations. My clients usually say the same thing. They have never been happier. I can tell just by seeing them that they are whole again. I have personally witnessed people get through this tough time, and I have seen people get out of these horrid relationships and survive. You can be happy again. Whether you have just a bad relationship or a narcissistic ex, you can survive.